This week marks 50 years since Hurricane Agnes brought devastation to much of Pennsylvania. To help recall that historic week, we turn to a Penn State meteorology alum who graduated in June 1972 and went on to a distinguished career in television, including the last 25 plus years in Philadelphia. Please welcome Glenn Schwartz, known to many as Hurricane Schwartz. Thanks for joining us, Glenn.
All right, thanks, John, and also known for the bow ties. This is a special lightning tie that a viewer actually sent to me. And this, of course, is the hat that you gave me one time.
We certainly want to point out the hat.
Yeah.
So Glenn, let's go back to June of 1972. Where were you during the time Agnes affected Pennsylvania, and how did it affect your Penn State graduation?
Yeah, John, it was just so weird because we had already finished classes, so I was home here in Philadelphia. And of course, we had the graduation ceremony scheduled for up in State College. So we were all getting ready to go. My parents were going to be coming up. And then this hurricane turned tropical storm, turned tropical depression, floods the whole state of Pennsylvania. The flooding is so bad that the governor gets on the radio and TV and urges people not to come to graduation ceremonies in State College because the governor's mansion was flooded in Harrisburg, record flooding all over the state. And so I was stranded at home while the graduation ceremony was going on. So I missed my own graduation because of a hurricane, which is kind of an irony later on.
And I understand Agnes is what led you to volunteer as an intern at a local TV station. Tell us about that.
Right. Well, I had interned at the ABC station in Philly, PBI Channel 6, the previous summer with a meteorologist. And again, I was finished my classes in June. I was getting ready to start at a company that later became known as AccuWeather in the fall. They didn't do any work during the summer. It was called Snow Warning Service. So they had hired me to start in September. So I had the whole summer free. So Agnes comes in, and of course I had nothing else to do. So I'm watching TV, and this new guy on Channel 6 comes in, not a meteorologist, and he had a really difficult time getting through. And so I volunteered to intern there for a second summer to help him out, make the weather forecasts. That was the late, great Jim O'Brien.
And so what are your recollections of the impacts Agnes had on the Philadelphia area?
Well, we had flooding like has never been seen before. And of course, it was even worse farther north up toward Wilkes-Barre and then west toward Harrisburg. And of course, as the biggest city in Pennsylvania, it was not just a local story because, I mean, people were dying and it was record flooding. And so the stations had to cover not only Philadelphia, but all of Eastern Pennsylvania. And that included taking helicopters up toward Wilkes-Barre every day to do reports because it was getting so bad up there.
And so what about the way Agnes was covered by local TV in Philadelphia? What do you recall most vividly?
Yeah, well, most vividly, I recall Jim O'Brien have a difficult time explaining it. But, you know, look at what we're talking about here. We're talking about a weakening tropical storm at that time, then downgraded to a depression, and yet the rain just keeps falling. The storm does a little spin and stalls. And to communicate that idea of a weakening storm with increasing flood threat, I mean, that would be difficult today.
So you spent more than 25 years at NBC 10 in Philadelphia, following in the footsteps of legends like Herb Clark, who was the weatherman there for many years and won awards for his coverage of Agnes. What
Right.
stories did Herb share with you about Agnes?
Well, Herb was not a meteorologist. And before he ended up doing the weather in Philly, he was a news director, I believe, down in Virginia. So he had a news background. And so he kind of combined his weather knowledge with his news skills. And he was doing various news related reports on the storm too. He was going up to Wilkes-Barre, Scranton every day to do a report and then fly back to Philadelphia to do the weather in the evening. And then he was scheduled to go to Harrisburg with one day and do a report. He was about to leave the station and he got called back because they wanted to do a half-hour special that night and they needed him for that. So they sent a reporter along with a photographer and a pilot to Harrisburg. That helicopter crashed and everybody died. And he had to lead his special report with that tragedy that he was supposed to be on. As a matter of fact, the state police called him up and were shocked to hear him because they had heard that Herb Clark was on the helicopter that crashed. So they were shocked to hear that he was alive.
Yeah, one of those stories, sort of the indirect effect of Hurricane Agnes. Glenn, our time together has gone by very quickly. Thanks for helping us remember that terrible week in June 1972 when Agnes wreaked destruction across the state. Glenn Hurricane Schwartz, Penn State class of 1972. Thanks very much, Glenn.
Thank you, John.
And we will be back in a moment with more.